Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Cotter, and I'm the executive director for Wicked Queer, Boston's LGBTQ plus film festival. And I am here with the filmmakers of the Men's Shorts program. And we're so happy to have everyone here. We're going to kind of go around. I'll have everyone introduce themselves. We'll do it kind of clockwise. Tell me your name, what film you're from, and give a little brief synopsis of your film. And go, Gary.
Hi, I'm Gary Jaffe. My film is Last Summer with Uncle Ira, which I co-directed with Katie Ennis. Last Summer with Uncle Ira is a love letter to my Uncle Barry, who died of AIDS, who then imagines what if a kid like me were 16 instead of 3, which is how old I was, and got to have almost the conversation that I never got to have with my uncle. So in this summer, in this moment, kid's about to go to summer camp. The uncle's probably not going to be around when he gets back. So the mom pushes him out to have a glass of lemonade and the chat of a lifetime with his uncle. And that's the movie.
We'll go with Ethan.
Hi, my name is Ethan Roberts. I was the writer, director, editor of Getting Closer, which is just a little iPhone shot, micro budget, kind of chamber piece about 2 boyfriends just having a little sexual encounter and trying to fight through the medicinally induced giggles to finish.
Great synopsis on that. Jeff.
Hi, my name is Jeff Locker. I'm the writer, producer, and the lead actor in The Forgotten Place. The Forgotten Place is adapted from a short play of the same name that I wrote that's published by Samuel French. And it's about a man, the character that I play, who's never had a best friend. And he finds a very unique way of seeking one out. And there's a magical realism element that hopefully you haven't seen it yet, I won't give away.
And Crit.
Hi, my name is Crit Complete Balagun. I'm from Canada, and my film and also Shannon's film is Plantonic. It's a metaphorical story about a gay couple, and basically it's about a young artist who plant a plant man, and how that ties into his real relationship.
Shelly, do you want to give a couple words to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. My name is Shannon McGuire. I'm the producer of Plantonic. And how I would describe Plantonic is it is a metaphor that's based on a relationship that's been neglected. The metaphor being a man that grows another man in his garden. I'm not going to reveal too much, but thanks for having me, Wicked Queer. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming and kind of joining us and sitting down to chat. This is one of the kind of my favorite parts of the sort of film festival is actually meeting all the filmmakers. We spend months and months and months kind of like going through all the submissions and watching all this stuff. And, when we finally put the program together, it's kind of amazing to kind of connect with the talent that kind of brings us through on the festival. And I was curating this program every year is kind of a challenge because my sensibilities are very I'm a very emotional kind of guy. I'm also kind of a sad boy in many ways. But the 2020 was hard. It was a hard thing, and I wanted moments of like lightness. And I feel like even though Crit and Gary, your films are really kind of heavy, and also Jeff in moments in your film too, a little bit of heaviness in there, but I feel like they were balanced with this sort of lightness. I mean, Crit, especially your film, like this, I was watching again this morning and I was in tears this morning with it. But I mean, for me, it's a very, very personal kind of like story of sort of like losing that sort of love and sort of like trying to sort of like navigate that space after. And I found that was really kind of like really wonderfully sort of like portrayed. Maybe if you can talk a little bit about sort of your thoughts about putting together this sort of relationship and sort of growing your own boyfriend, but then sort of like navigating that sort of the lows and highs of it.
Sorry, your cat.
I know,
is
he's
so
a
cute.
distractor. And this is Jacques, the cat of the festival. No, just kidding. He's just a cat.
Plantonic is mainly based on my own experience. Like I'm not gonna get too much into it, but basically I think everybody has that kind of relationship, whether it's romantic or not. And you sort of did something or didn't do something or didn't do enough for that relationship, and now you're living this regrets. And I think it's such a good metaphor to relate that into growing a plant or taking care of a plant, because basically it's as delicate as each other. And yeah, I think it was a great tool to tell a story, and that's why I try to incorporate like this little storytelling between the two characters and like the montage and all those things, just because, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of starts out as a sort of like, it seems like almost a role play kind of thing. And I was,
Yeah,
when I first watched it, I was kind of like, where's this going to go? The plant story. And I was like, where's this going to go? But like I said, you handle this really kind of wonderfully, the sort of navigation of sort of the highs and lows of sort of relationships and how sort of men kind of connect to each other when they are in a relationship, which is kind of great. And that kind of leads me to Jeff. Your film also has a lot of highs and lows and heavy and navigation, because it's like the job interview. And it was funny because when I was finalizing sort of the programming, I myself was going through a lot of job interviews, and I was just like, this is like the best interview ever, but also the worst and scariest interview ever. So tell me a little bit about how your film kind of came about, and kind of talk to me a little bit about sort of why you sort of wanted to portray this sort of almost life path in your film.
Well, first, I actually want to give a shout out to Plantonic. I'm glad I did not find the plant in the Plantonic when I was looking at the title. I saw Platonic, and I had that same journey of like, what is this? He's burying some guy alive. And then I just thought it was very, very poignant and beautiful. And we just started our festival run, and I've been watching a lot of like different film festivals, some that we got into and some that we didn't get into. And there's just so much darkness and sadness and just like, especially after this year. So this whole block, there was just so much levity and light and hope, just like you said, Sean. So I just wanted to like give everybody a shout out for like lifting my spirits last night when I was watching all of these films. And then I watched Godzilla, and it was like, now let's balance it with monsters. Yeah, so so I started off as a playwright, and I was mainly write short plays. I'm an actor too, and so in my acting class, I was kind of bringing like little scenes in short plays and just kind of using my classmates as guinea pigs and saying like, I found this thing and I think you should try it, not telling them that I had written it myself. And I had traditionally like just written those like super dramatic acting class scenes where like people are basically screaming at each other. And there's a guy who plays Kip in the film, and he and I were becoming good friends. And I think just part of the inspiration came from like, I moved to LA at a bit of an older age, and it was like, how do you find friends again? How do you, like, everybody already has their people, and I moved here not having my people. And so trying to make friends with people who already have their besties and their posses and whatever, and trying to figure out where I fit in, and then just deciding that I didn't, and kind of like pulling back was a bit of the inspiration. So Eric, the character I play, has never had a best friend, and he just can't find one. So he places an ad in the paper, and what you see in the film is kind of the last interview of the day, and he's got a stack of papers of kind of like, we don't know how those candidates work, but then in walks this guy. And I guess I'll have to give away like the magical realism element. They're able to foresee their entire friendship up until one of them passes, and they live their entire friendship over the course of 10 minutes. And then at the very end, they have to decide whether or not Eric has to decide whether or not Kip got the job. So a lot of it came from loneliness, and so many days sitting at my computer just writing the friends that I wish that I had in real life, and then writing kind of the friend that not so much that I wish that I had, as much as like recognizing that friendships, all relationships are difficult. And if you could, at its core, if you could foresee all of the downs as well as the ups, would you, if you knew somebody was going to hurt you, but they were going to bring you so much comfort and joy, would you still decide to go on that journey with that person? So hopefully we did it justice in the short.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that sort of like really kind of struck me about your film, is that it had so much sort of heart, but it went to all those uncomfortable places. And for me, like I was so compelled by this sort of journey that these two characters that just met went on, and all the sort of the sort of like the whole. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give spoilers away, and like you guys can talk
If
about
this is
spoilers.
Yeah, if this is at the end of the shorts, let's just
Yeah, this
assume
is gonna be at the end of the shorts program, so don't feel like afraid to kind of like talk about it, because
No,
I'd rather have us kind of really chat about this. What I mean, the sort of like the the illness and sort of like kids and like all this kind of like not being there for each other, and sort of that kind of setup. But then it sort of had this nice sort of redemption as well, where it's like, yeah, I'm not going to be there for you, and things are going to happen, but I'm going to set you up with the love of your life kind of thing.
It's interesting because we had the benefit of performing it in a couple play festivals. So we did it in New York City off Broadway at the Samuel French Short Play Festival, and we did it at a festival here in LA. And it's a really interesting experience because people, there's so much like buddy guy humor up top, like bro stuff, and then it takes a really dark, like basically at one point my character shares that he was raped while they were not friends anymore, and he says that I couldn't tell you about it because you weren't my friend, we weren't friends. And when we were performing it live, like you can hear, and it's presented just like information versus like, here's a heavy thing that I'm going to tell you now. But when we did the play, like everybody thought that we were going this way, and then the rape thing happened, and like you could hear gasps from the audience of like, oh shit, like this, and it I mean, as actors we were like, yes, but also that's a terrible thing to be like excited about. But it was really quite an experience of getting to do it live, and getting feedback from like youngins. And we had an 80-year-old man who was like sobbing throughout and said he had just lost his best friend of like 40 something years or 50 something years to skin cancer, which is the same, and was just like holding me and shaking. And you're like, oh wow, this is amazing. So at least I haven't seen the film with anybody else yet, because I've been alone in my apartment for a year, but at least we had that. I'm looking forward to a live in-person screening so I can just like gauge how the film is working versus the play. But it's been quite
I mean, that was like that's like one of the things that I definitely have missed, is to watch these programs. And actually because we did virtual last year, as well as a lot of the programs and a lot of the films too, with an audience, I feel like sometimes it's a little bit, it's so much different to get that sort of that reaction of the room. And I hope as filmmakers that you're not sort of like, it seems like such a little almost like hermetically sealed bubble of watching things. And this year sort of we wanted to sort of like have a way of people connecting a little bit more. So I hope that we can kind of achieve that with this, because that that sort of audience sort of reaction with the filmmakers, I think is so important, because you're seeing your work sort of portrayed. Also, and I actually have to say, I've got validation. I mean, exactly. But I mean, even with watching your film, like sort of like the first time I watched it, it was just like it hit like like it hit here like so hard. And I appreciated that, because again, like I said, I was going through a lot of interviews, but I feel like COVID is, I live by myself with my cats, and I thought it was like really kind of interesting to sort of like have that sort of journey kind of just like come out in front of you. And it just made me really think about my friends and people that I've missed and stuff like that. So it definitely brought up a lot of really interesting sort of journeys of my own little mind. So
the only benefit to COVID, I will say, and there's no benefit to COVID, it has sucked, but we started filming the week before COVID hit. And so we got all the interview portion out. And then because of COVID, we had to shut down for what we thought was going to be 3 weeks. And then months later, so because we had to like shoot over several months, like hair grew out, beards grow out, like I got gray. Like it was, so we actually got to all the flash forwards actually, we aged up like almost naturally in certain ways. So that was the only silver lining, but otherwise it's been an experience.
So Ethan, tell me a little bit about how your project sort of came out. And I love that it was shot on an iPhone, if I'm correct. Yes.
Yeah, that actually, the iPhone thing, it's been something I wanted to do for a while, but it also came kind of out of necessity. My main collaborator who shot the thing, his name is Nigel. He lives far away now. We went to college, but the logistics of trying to either fly gear here to Austin or rent gear when we had zero budget, we were just like, hey, let's shoot it on an iPhone, particularly because the concept was so kind of that you could shoot it on an iPhone, I guess. It just was mainly close-ups with the use of darkness. But yeah, I was kind of inspired by those sort of talky, low-budget kind of new queer films of the late 80s, early 90s, like Greg Araki's Three Bewildered People in the Dark and Together Alone, or Hugh Harrison's Jerker, which is amazing. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it.
Nice.
So yeah, I just wanted to do something very intimate. And it's interesting that, levity was mentioned, because having done the film festival circuit with my last short, I also noticed that a lot of films were either, about goodbyes in particular, or, some kind of tragic catharsis. And I was interested, and I'm always interested in exploring the more kind of delightful and joyful, even if it's low-key joyful aspects of catharsis. So intimacy was something that I was looking at portraying, and I wanted to portray intimacy as, something that can be low stakes and organic, but also, pleasurable.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely got the sort of the queer new wave sort of aspect of it a lot, yeah, and definitely Greg Araki. But I also thought like Go Fish kind of like came to
Yes, I
like
love
mind when I watched it. Also like Watermelon Woman, believe it or not. Like I just thought that the sort of the chattiness of it kind of reminded me a little bit about that sort of chatty insouciance of the queer new wave, which I kind of really appreciate. And I think that like we're ripe for that to happen again.
for sure.
So I encourage I've been encouraging filmmakers to go back in time a little bit to the 90s, because the 90s are sort of hot now, but also sort of really explore genre, because I feel like genre is also another kind of thing. And romantic comedy is great, and also the sort of like cathartic tragedy kind of, but we've definitely had a lot of grief narratives, and as myself as a self-professed sad boy, I'll always be attracted to those. But I have to say, like, I really kind of gravitating towards, like, again, all the light moments in the sort of program, and also the programming in general. I feel like this year, more than ever, is there's a lot of sort of like lighter points in it, and I'm really glad that queer filmmaking has sort of gotten itself sort of there. And Gary, I wanted to kind of bring you in too, so talk about light points and levity in a very heavy kind of story. One, I have to say that your film, I love the sort of nostalgia of it, and that sort of the gay uncle and your sort of personal sort ofness to it, compared to your last film that we showed last year, which was Next Level Shit, which was a complete amazing comedy. Instant plug, I love it.
Very different
Like
movie.
night and day, which is amazing, and it actually speaks to your versatility as a filmmaker, to sort of like kind of tread both of those paths very effectively. I have to say that, the growing up and living through the AIDS crisis as a teenager, I was probably a little bit older than your young leads at that time, because I was probably about 17 or so, and I was 18 in 1987. So the AIDS crisis was you couldn't, it was hard to be gay, like, honestly, because it was like you immediately, if you ever came out to someone, it was like you immediately were dead, like dead and gone. And it was kind of a shocking way to kind of come out. And I love the sort of kind of like the humor that Uncle sort of Ira deals with this sort of situation. And I found that was like that was sort of really realistic to sort of some of the way that, you know, people deal with such a heavy sort of like terminal illness. Maybe you can talk a little bit about more about your uncle and your sort of like person, how you put your sort of your own personal narrative into this film.
Well, I like that we have a theme percolating about imagining things into reality that weren't, whether that's best friends or plant boyfriends or whatever we're talking about. Because I was 3 when my uncle died. And my whole life, I had this relationship with this man that I didn't know. First of all, because our names rhyme. So people are like, oh, well, you know, when Gary died, and I'm like, oh, I'm still here. And, or I would get called Barry a lot. And there were a lot of overlaps and similarities. And in some ways, like, especially as I got to realize that I was gay too, I was deeply resentful of that. And then eventually I was like, what are these complicated feelings about this man I didn't know? When the real sad thing is that I almost had queer family. I was bar mitzvahed with his tallis. And I almost was like bar mitzvahed into the queer community by my gay uncle, except he died. So, I didn't know him. And by all accounts, he had a sort of sad, lonely, and miserable life, according to my mom. And so to bring him back, it was very important to me that he have a sense of humor and that he have a vibrancy, and that the real important thing for him is to connect with his nephew, even if the nephew isn't quite ready to like actually talk about it. And that we keep it as light and as real and almost as like goofy as possible. Like kids going to summer camp, it's not jail, you know. My first short film deals with like a guy who's like going off to war and the other one is staying home, and like it's very big and dramatic. And this is like kids going to summer camp. Summer camp is 8 weeks. Uncle will not be alive in 8 weeks. And then even just like that the kind of the image in this one is like it's a glass of lemonade that they're going to go and have and share. It's like I kind of tried to push it as like as real and simple as possible, so that they could just talk, and so that, you know, the real rich sadness of the thing could percolate underneath, but never, well, not never, but I didn't want it to be like a kind of thing.
Fainting down on the fainting couch, you know.
Yeah. Although I do love a good fainting couch. I mean,
who doesn't really? The other kind of amazing thing about your film too is the mother, who doesn't really have a lot of lines, but she is such a presence in that. And props to that Torch Song Trilogy like t-shirt. Like,
I tell you about that t-shirt because this is the most amazing thing. So first of all, that's Tony winner Stephanie J. Block, who is amazing, and we like asked her to do it, and she's like, okay.
Nice.
Crazy. That shirt is my mom's shirt, and I grew up in the best family ever, and I wrote into the script that she's like wearing a cutoff kind of workday shirt at workday at home, and mom read the script and she said, oh, you mean my Torch Song Trilogy shirt? And I was like, yes, that is exactly what I mean. She sent it from Austin to New York. We got it. It fit Stephanie perfectly. And so just, imagine hanging out for 2 days on City Island in the Bronx with Stephanie J. Block wearing my mom's Torch Song Trilogy t-shirt and just being like, but I think like, the script didn't write until mom was in it, because I didn't feel like Kid would do this on his own. He needs the push. And then in turn, we need an audience surrogate to kind of understand how to look at what's happening here. And so we begin with mom, we kind of check on her in the middle, and at the end, we really see that these are her boys and that she loves them and she's worried for both of them for different reasons, but is also kind of ultimately moved that the thing that she put into motion seems to have paid off in its little bitty way. And Stephanie nailed every take.
Yep, she's good. And those were her top boys.
Different,
Just-
yeah.
Just saying.
That's all based on the boys' summer camp I went to. Like I went to a Texas boys' summer camp like 2 hours west of Austin, which is I was bad at everything, but like the bravery tree, there was that, and it was all very straight. And an event like a counselor once said like, I don't like Austin, too many gays there. And I was like starting to know who I was. I was like, I don't need to be at this camp anymore. But it did give me things to write about.
So you never were top boy?
No, okay, so you know how summer camps do bad things involving like Native American like things? It
Oh,
was
yeah.
actually called Black Eagle Chief, and I'm embarrassed that I wanted it so badly, but I did not get it. But I'm kind of glad that I didn't get it because now I don't have to feel bad about it.
No. I think you need an official top boy then award just for your.
Yes, and I'm really eager to see what that belt buckle looks like. Like, I just want it to be as a homoerotic as possible.
If I could just chime in really quickly here, Gary. Because of your short, I was able to introduce my boyfriend to Stephanie J. Block because I recognized her and he did not. And I was just like, okay, have a seat. Let me just tell you all about this woman. So I was amazed that she was in it. And yeah, thank you so much for bringing her into this.
Broadway actors of great renown, if you call them and you're like, 2-day shoot in New York, what are you doing? They often will do it because if they're not doing a show, they oftentimes have the time. And worst case, nobody sees it. Best case, people do see it. And then, you know, then they get to start moving into film and TV, which as they had a whole thing about it, the Tonys a couple years ago, is like what every product actor wants. But she's just so generous and wonderful on set, and I'm in love.
And thank you for introducing her to me too, because I had no idea. So
Go on a YouTube plunge. She's really good. She did Nancy and Oliver at Austin Musical Theater when I was a kid. So like she's kind of she's
Oh, now I want to meet her.
everyone should meet her.
oh, that's amazing. So I guess one more question for you, Gary. So what was in the letter?
What do you think was in the letter?
Her famous chocolate chip cookie recipe. I don't know. It's weird because it there could be so many different sort of things in the letter. It could be,
I mean,
yeah, it could be more about Uncle Ira. For me it was the letter was there and I was like, what is that letter?
I don't know if I'm breaking up or if you're breaking up.
Oh, I don't know. Can you hear me now?
He looks frozen.
Me?
Oh no, we're back.
I'm back. I'm back.
Okay.
I put all my devices on airplane mode. So the letter question is interesting because really it points to a couple things I would do a little differently. One, we needed to get more footage of Wayne writing the letter at the beginning because it was just too fast. And then like Katie and I are in the editing room being like, crap, we just don't have enough footage of him writing it to make it clear at the beginning that it's from him. And two, I should have maybe considered a little bit of having 2 plots in a short film because usually a short film has 1 plot. But the intention of the letter was that it's something that Ira writes at the beginning that he gives to mom and that mom puts into the trunk and the trunk goes with the kid. And it's just the message. It's the message from generation to generation because that's something I'm very interested about in queer storytelling and in queer cultures, that we have a lot of horizontal interaction, if you know what I mean, but not a lot of vertical interaction. And I think it's really important for generations to talk to each other. One of the most valuable experiences of my life is a group that meets at the LGBT Center in the West Village, which has people who are in their 80s and people who are in their, who are 18. And so just to have a bunch of this is a gay men's group, like a bunch of gay men like talking to each other across generations, fills my heart. And that whatever the hell is in it, whatever Ira wrote to his nephew, lick and stamp it and send it, it doesn't really matter to me. What matters is that the message keeps going. The movie is the letter, so there's the answer to your question.
Thank you. That really did that was into the question. Ethan, for you, what was the strain of marijuana that they were smoking that made them so giggly and also kind of sexy?
Well, I would never think about breaking the law. Obviously, I just
It's
wanna-
legal in Massachusetts. You're totally fine.
Yeah, it's legal in Massachusetts. I don't think it'll ever be legal in Texas ever. So just throwing that
Reason to
out
move
there.
here.
But I will say that in my last trip to California, I did try one called Monster Cookie, which I can recommend to everybody.
Nice. That's it's good. I'm writing that down, and hopefully the dispensaries will carry. So Crit, for you, how did it the sort of like kind of planting and growing your own boyfriend is such an interesting concept. Like, how did you come about sort of like conceptualizing sort of growing your own boyfriend? Because it, for me, I'm like, this is it's such a stretch of realism that it just kind of like I just kind of want to know why, where it came from.
I think maybe because well, I grew up in Bangkok before I moved to Vancouver in Canada, and while I was in Thailand, I live in quite a conservative family, so I couldn't come out. I couldn't come out to my friends or my family, so I cannot have any relationship basically, and I would often fantasize my imaginary boyfriend and maybe that part kind of came into this script and like with the whole planting your boyfriend thing.
That's great. I mean, it kind of made me want to like order online to see if I could grow my own. Not that I have a green thumb at all. But I just, I mean, I really kind of love that the sort of imagery of the broken pot and the sort of like him kind of like buried in the garden.
Yeah,
it
was an interesting day on set for sure with burying our actor. Maybe I'll let Shannon talking about that a little bit if you want to.
Oh, yeah, of course. Kenny Brain played the character Pine, and we had to actually have a stopwatch with him going into the ground to him coming up, just because, you know, you can't breathe, obviously, with a bunch of dirt on top of you. So we were really careful about that. And Kenny was such a good sport. We shot in like, it was like 38-degree heat. He was dirty. It was not comfortable for him, but he did it, you know, like an absolute champ. Meanwhile, like as a producer, you're like, we need to get him out of the dirt in 60 seconds. And you're watching your stopwatch, you know, you're just making sure that everything is safe for the actor. But it was an exciting time. And I mean, he really, really nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, like, again, it was really kind of like, I mean, it was like a fun sort of like stretch of the imagination. And like I said, again, at the beginning, I was like, is this role play? And then so as the story kind of grows along, I'm like, what is happening here? But I mean, again, like again, wrapping it, sort of like bringing that sort of the threads of sort of how men kind of connect with each other. And I feel like that was sort of universal in all of your sort of films about sort of the connection between these men, and whether it was romantic or not, it still was really powerful. And I feel like one of the sort of real joys of sort of curating this program is sort of finding films that sort of explore that, because I feel like that those conversations don't happen enough in our culture between men, you know, sort of relating to each other. Maybe if you could all maybe speak a little bit about that. We'll start with Ethan.
Could you say the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just sort of like talking about how sort of the men in your film kind of like relate to each other, and how that is sort of like it's still new ground in many ways in our culture, especially American culture.
Yeah, I really wanted to kind of, like I said before, sort of normalize, that's a word we say a lot now, but kind of like the intimacy between two men and what exactly that looks like. I think that even when you're in a relationship, sharing, you know, private sexual thoughts can be something very taboo, or something that you feel like you want to keep to yourself for whatever reason. So I think the primary intimacy in my short is one of the boyfriends kind of opening up about, you know, what he is into, and, you know, what he thought about the last time he jacked off, and his partner not necessarily taking it in stride, but sort of seeing it as an opportunity to help his partner get off and kind of meet him in the middle there. I think that without getting, too millennial, I think that sometimes we think about the sexual interaction between men in very heterosexist ways about, it's just like, here's the top, here's the bottom, and they do X, Y, and Z. And you don't really see, what kind of sexual thing is happening. It's beneath the frame with my film. And you can imagine, whatever it is. I think that the point that I was trying to get at, here are two men who are really enjoying each other's presence. And at the end, when one of the partners says, I love you, and the other partner just goes, gay, I think that that is kind of a sort of like boyish thing. And it shows that, you can say, I love you, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, kind of like melodramatic Shakespearean thing, so.
Cars going off cliffs and,
Yeah,
everything
exactly. It
on
doesn't
the
have to be,
side.
yeah.
But I have to say, like, what I really loved about the sort of the exchange between your two protagonists is like, I love that sort of like the fantasy play, because it made that connection between them so real. And I really kind of appreciated that sort of that interchange between them, because you can, I mean, their descriptive is, it's like, I kind of sometimes I hate sex talk, because it's always this sort of like, it seems so scripted, but for some reason, even though I'm sure it was scripted because it was part of the script, but it felt really organic for the moment, and that was kind of really refreshing, because I feel like a lot of that sort of pillow talk, again, it's like, it's like this sort of like hung up in this sort of like this sort of vision of what masculinity is supposed to be. And I thought, like, again, it was so refreshing to sort of have this sort of connection between the two that was really organic, and it felt very genuine and authentic.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was really intentional to try to stay away from any aspect of power or power play or one of the partners having the power. I was kind of looking at it as a completely balanced, equal thing. So I'm glad that came across.
And it was funny too, because that you kind of hinted at it with the whole daddy talk, which I kind of, I'm as an older man, I kind of like, because I don't ever want children, and I'm sorry to say that people like children, but I personally, children are not, children here. Like, the term daddy is such a loaded term, I think, and I think in gay culture, and I like the way that you sort of like danced around it and kind of really kind of spoke to it at the same time, and I felt that it was really good. It kind of it sat with my own sort of sensibilities around it too, that it's kind of funny, but it doesn't have to be all that serious, and yeah. I feel like people do make that serious.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, I am I'm 30, and when I was single, I was 26, and I have a beard. That was something that I was called once, and I'm just like, I'm not old enough to have children, like what's going on here. So yeah, the idea that daddy is more of a state of mind than anything else is I think that I was trying to make that point.
Crit, sort of same question to you about the sort of the intimacy and the sort of representation of the relationship between the men. I found your film really, the relationship between them is, yes, it was carrying as sort of like because it was a sort of plant human kind of thing, but it was the relationship between them was so loving and so like sort of affectionate and tender that again, something that we don't see very often in portrayals of gay male relationships, and I want to say bravo for sort of portraying that, but kind of talk a little bit about sort of your sort of mindset about going into that and sort of wanting to sort of portray that authentically.
For sure, just kind of like what Ethan said about intimacy is because it's something that I really wanted to explore and show on screen, but also Plantonic mainly talking about this maybe this era that we're living in, that we live our lives so fast, like we're moving all the time, we're doing all these things, and sometimes we neglect people in our life, and those relationships kind of faded away, and just like in my film where the relationship between Rain and Pine kind of fading, and that's where this story is kind of like a representation of the whole relationship. And Yeah, I think that's something about writing about these two characters that kind of connect with me personally, and to see how that actually connect with other people. And yeah.
Well, that totally makes sense. So again, this question is going to go to Jeff now, because again, even though it was sort of like an interview, I mean, they went through they went through all the highs and lows of a lifetime of friendship, and kind of tell me how you wanted the sort of the relationship between the two men to be like more authentic and kind of organic between them, because it really felt that way.
Thank you. Yeah, I love this topic. The idea of intimacy just between humans in general, but particularly between men, because it's something that's always like perplexed me and at times plagued me. I grew up in a super, like, the definition of toxic masculinity environment. So, you know, I didn't come out of a place where we talked about feelings or we talked really to each other. To this day, my brothers, we really don't talk about anything. Not an insult to them, it's just the environment we grew up in. But I think also, like, I found it interesting, and I don't think this is necessarily an LA thing, but like also being an actor in an acting class, like, you know, we would do these, you know, they're all two-handers, right? So these super intimate scenes of like people, you know, guy, whatever, talking about really deep and dark things. And you would see actors break down, and we would have talkbacks in our scenes afterwards with our teacher. And, you know, you'd see guys just bawling and da 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 da. And then class would end, and it'd be like, you know, I would be like, I feel like we all need to like kind of hang out and talk about stuff. And people would just go off. And this isn't an insult to my fellow actors, but it's like, wow, we just had this really intimate emotional experience with each other. Maybe we were in the same scene, and yet like outside of class, it's like, what's up, bro? And I'm like, oh, that feels so strange to now be calling each other like bro, when we just had this super intimate experience together, like where we lived in it. So I mean, the good thing, you know, about this is I think I already knew Brian. We had already been in class together, and we had already started talking about working together on things. And so this was a person that I already trusted. He's a very, you know, he's got his bro-y moments, but he's also super sensitive and he's super philosophical. So he's a person who could like sit down and actually talk about intimacy as a concept, and somebody that I can trust to like go on, especially in this piece, like to kind of go on this journey and not feel, you know, not feel weird about, you know, actually, when I wrote it, I had not assigned any kind of like sexual identities to either of these characters. It just kind of happened as it was going along. It kind of happened that his character was straight, my character was gay. But, you know, when I presented it to him, I didn't feel, you know, I wasn't nervous about like, oh, is he going to have a weird, you know, if he's going to have issues with like the gay thing, which is like sometimes actors, it's so funny, you give an actor a scene and be like, is there any gay stuff in there? And you're like, just like, you know, if you get hired, you're gonna do it, right? So just I don't know, I can talk about that all day. But I thought it was interesting that once we started kind of either performing the play or showing the short to people, and people were like, wow, so this is a piece about like a gay straight relationship. And I was like, I never ever thought of it that way. But that's a super interesting topic, right? Because that's not easy that's not easy on both sides of the fence, right? It's not something that you really see, like real intimacy between a straight guy and a gay guy, or whatever permutation of you want. It's not something that like that everybody feels comfortable with, whatever their hangups are. So I thought it was really interesting that for some people that was the takeaway. We even had a conversation with my producers about like when we were considering what festivals, and it was like, should we? One of the festivals had like an LGBTQ category, and it was like, should we even submit under that? Even though we have queer crew and there's a queer character, it was like, maybe it's not queer enough. And yet to some people, it was only about a queer man and a straight man's friendship. And so this is our first queer festival. So it's been a really interesting kind of experience to also see all the other films and be like, okay, we run the spectrum of stories, and the stories can be broader than maybe what they were, you know, 20 years ago in some film festivals, where like the LGBTQ block was like definitely fell into like, it felt like it fell into a certain category beyond. Does that make sense? Is that right?
No, completely. And I feel like as a programmer, like I honestly, like I don't want gay best friend movies. I don't like, we won't we don't
Of the gay best friend.
the gay best friend, or like, because it has to be
Exactly.
like a gay. And what I liked about your film is that the main character was queer, and I think that's what sort of like brought me over to it. Besides the fact that your story sort of hit me in the heart as well.
Well,
But I
I was at my favorite moment when we again we did the play first, and my Kip's character passes, and we're talking about he's saying you're going to be okay, after I go, and then I form a friendship, or we talk about his son whose name is Troy, and I don't know if you've seen the film yet, but like I say, your son is going to look so much like you, and we found an actor that looks so much like Brian. He's like, he looks so much like you, and he's like, and I'm like, yeah, he's really going to break some ladies' hearts, and Kip says more like some guys, and the two of them like have a high five moment where it's like, and he's like more like some guys, like he's so that actually gives me goosebumps. Like he's like, my kid's gonna remind me a little bit of you, at least in the queer sensibility space. And when we did that for the first time and did this high five, like there was such a release with the audience of like, yeah, that's okay. And that like 10, 20 years ago, that would have been such a huge thing. And it was just like this light, sweet moment of like your straight best friend being like, yeah, like that's gonna be a great thing, and he'll remind me of you. Yeah, anyway.
Well, I mean, that's also the sort of the point too of like there's a moment where you as your character kind of confesses to him that he's going to make out with them, and I felt like the way that that sort of handled that sort of like, and he's like, I'm going to let it he's like, it's going to make me uncomfortable, I'm going to let it happen though. And I thought that was really like super interesting, because I don't know, I feel like all gay men have had that moment of like sort of like
that was the moment that like when I gave the script to Brian, because we initially, it was just a thing to work on in our acting class, and I warned him in advance. I was like, by the way, we're not going to kiss, you're going to see a thing, but like don't freak out, which is like we feel like we have to preface that, which is already like a different conversation. And he's like, dude, who cares, But I will say, when we filmed that like flash forward, and it's literally just like they're watching the game, and then my character kind of looks at him, and then he looks at him again, and he says, by the way, I'm gonna kiss you. And Kip says, like, it's fine, it's part of your process. But I will say that was the most awkward thing to film. One, because it was just like, I want Brian to know that I'm not looking at Brian the actor this way. Just so you know, I didn't write this because I wanted to like expose feelings for you. But also, it was the first thing that we filmed during COVID. It was my first time being in a room with another person without my mask. Oh, and wow. So we had to get tested, and we had, what I mean? Like, and I was shaking, because I was shaking more because I didn't want to be in a room with somebody else during COVID. And then on top of it, this like weird little like, and the director was like, should we try the kiss? And we're both like, no, let's not do the kiss. But also mainly because it was COVID, but I was like, I don't think we need that. We don't need to do the actual kiss. We're good.
No, and I think that like it didn't really need it, because you got the sort of the emotion across with that sort of scene. That sort of that awkwardness of sort of like the exploration and the confusing feelings that you might have, because you're your best friend and he's a man and you're attracted to men, and like as gay men we kind of all going to go through that at some point in our lives, especially when we're kind of like coming out and kind of finding ourselves. I feel like
he honestly probably would have been more. He would have been like, yeah, do we need the kiss? And I'm like, no, we do not need a kiss. I do not feel comfortable doing it. And I had to work on my own kind of like toxic masculinity, my own, what I mean? Like, what does this mean that I don't want to like, because he's an actor, like it was an interesting kind of experience to go through. But most people who have seen the film, like almost nobody ever comments on that scene, the thing that I kind of overthought, which is great, because we've come a long way.
Because you overthought it enough that we kind of go to the sort of.
Well, there's also enough. Hopefully, there's enough moments that like stand out that are bigger. I actually had somebody who was really touched because his character takes my character to therapy. He forces him. He's like, I'm gonna take you to therapy. I'm gonna sit your ass down, and I'm gonna go with you. And I've had more people respond to that, like saying like, that's what friends are supposed to, not force someone to go to therapy, but like that friend who would be like, you're in trouble, I need to help you, and you don't know that you need help, and I'll go with you if it makes you feel better, and I'll give you that support. Like the fact that people respond to that more than like this potential kiss is like, that's a lot more meaningful to me.
Oh, I would completely agree with that. And getting the job also.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, that, like again, the journey of that is like, I was like, this is again the best interview that I've ever sort of witnessed.
Some people think he didn't get the. It's interesting because some people are like, "Did he get the job?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like
course he
the
got the
final
job.
frame is we smile. Like they just went through this whole thing. Of course he got the job. Like what film would that be?
Maybe
if
you
he-
needed to push the big pile
Yeah.
of papers off the table or something.
Yeah.
You got it.
I think the hopeful people are like, "Yay!" And then they're like, "Maybe he didn't," and this is a different story. Yeah.
So obviously COVID is like sort of, prevalent everywhere right now. I guess my last question would be, it's kind of twofold. One, how has COVID sort of really kind of affected your sort of filmmaking and film production? And two, this is your chance to plug anything that's coming up that you've got going, anything in the works, stuff like that. And I'm going to start with Shannon because I feel like we're neglecting you with all this man talk.
No, it's been very informative, but I appreciate it, of course. And I love your little cat. I just keep seeing her.
Oh, and you just have, he's left and now he's summoned back. So
Oh, that's great. No, I mean, COVID, everyone has their stories of how the shut-in affected them. As a producer, obviously it's marketing your films and it's how you do that and how you pivot. I found that there was some benefits. I was very strategic about the film festivals, being able to see more films and be able to talk to the filmmakers. I found that that was a benefit when it came to us. And we also had more of a local presence because that's where we could, kind of dig in such a crazy time. So, as a producer, you kind of have to find the strategy and quickly, like everybody else, for your, specific films. In Plantonic's case, I would say that I met filmmakers a little bit more intimately through the virtual world, I guess. I don't want it forever, but I do see there is a benefit that isn't just like at the, martini hour having a chat about a film as opposed to, having these strategic conversations and being able to meet filmmakers that are in the same genre of your film and maybe some of the struggles that they've gone through. And there was a lot of sharing there. And I think that that's really, really quite fantastic. Yeah, and we're working towards a feature film called Free Fall. And Free Fall is about a concert pianist that's diagnosed with ALS. It's an LGBTQ2+S film. It's a romantic drama. It is going to rip your heart out. And we're very, very excited about it. So we're in development, in pre-production actually for that. And you can head, on Instagram. It's Freefall Film for all of our updates, or Pendulum Films for what is happening next with all of us, Crit included, because this is again written and directed by him. So.
awesome.
Thank you,
Well,
Crit. Yeah.
yeah, thanks, Crit. Anything that you want to talk about as far as like the pandemic, and obviously you've kind of leaked the free fall, but anything else you want to kind of plug of what's coming next?
Not necessary. I haven't been working in films a lot this past year, basically, other than doing the film festival circuits for Plantonic. It's because I don't really want to shoot anything during COVID. I find it a little bit too restricted to tell my story. So I'm just trying to waiting for it to pass and working on my other project, like my comic called Barry Danny. Yeah, and that's about it.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Ethan, how about you?
Yeah, the last year has been horrible. Been just really anxious and depressed all of the time. And then, I mean, I don't know if y'all know, but in Texas, we really don't take it seriously. So yeah, I've been kind of shut in. But it has given me a opportunity to edit Getting Closer, because we wrapped the production in November of 19. So I had a nice long leisurely post-production period, which was nice because, we literally can't do anything at this point. But at this point, I don't really have anything on the pike. But if I'm submitting to more festivals, so if you all want to just look out for Getting Closer, that would be nice. And yeah, and if I can just second Crit, I am a follower of Barely Danny, and it is an amazing, cute little queer comic. So I also encourage everybody to check that out.
Yay. That's so great. Gary, what about you?
Well, so Last Summer with Uncle Ira is a proof of concept short for a feature film that my team, Katie and Emily and I, have been pushing forward from our Zoom screens. And that feature film is called Our Last Summer. And it's been kind of crazy because without leaving the apartment, we like went through the Finance Forum at Inside Out, Toronto, Canada. We went through IFP, which is now called Gotham. It was an Outfest screenwriting lab script. So like, I just feel like without any dramatic flights anywhere, we seem to be like going places. And it may not happen this year, but it may happen this year. If it is going to happen this year, we'll be filming in August. So send vibes, set some energy out. Amazing to have it happen, and essentially whole summer. In fact, the feature script was written before, and the short is like a distillation.
Oh, Gary. Gary, I think we lost. I think you're frozen. Oh, and we lost him. Oh, here you are. I can't. You're muted.
I do AD for my day job, and this is like
This is the modern world. So
So
Gary, we heard distillation, and then that was
great. So the short film was a distillation of this feature script. But you know, I joke that productivity is my coping mechanism because like it was really rough to be here in New York and hear the wailing of the ambulances and the deep fear for the life of the city and our own lives and et cetera. And but basically from March, my team and I like cracked down, put the script through 20 rewrites, have gotten it in front of people, and wish us luck. So if the cinema gods smile upon us, we'll be filming it in August. As far as another plug goes, if you didn't catch it at Wicked Queer last year, Next Level Shit is on YouTube. So go see it. They slapped an age restriction on it, which is crazy because it's not totally about a man who's preparing to have anal sex and wants his butt to be totally clean. Why should anyone who's under 18 be able to watch it freely? I mean, come on, what Puritans, right?
I know, pilgrims.
But since we were talking about intimacy between men, I like to think that each of my films and the films I like most, no matter what the subject matter or the style, level up the intimacy by the end. And so you'll see Last Summer with Uncle Ira has that between the uncle and the nephew, especially with that grasping of the hand at the end. And Next Level Shit does it in other ways. So check it out online on YouTube. You just search my name and it'll be there.
Yep, and it was definitely a highlight of the programming team's planning sessions when we were kind of talking about the programming too. We love Next Level Shit. So yes, I highly recommend see Next Level Shit. Jeff, any future plans? COVID quickies?
Yeah, COVID quickies. No COVID quickies. Definitely no COVID quickies. I will echo what Shannon said. I have really enjoyed. We just started a festival run last month, and so I've really actually enjoyed some like the Q&As and getting to know filmmakers. I have social anxiety about like those martini before screenings, after screenings, and I just kind of want to stand in the corner, preferably like near the bathroom, where you just watch people go. I don't know what that means. Anyway, so I rarely get to like meet the filmmakers. So this has been a really like kind of a nice silver lining to all of that. And then I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to like last summer and Forgotten Place, this is the second festival we've been in the same block together. And I'm like, oh, that's like how nice that you're starting to like get to know and you can like start Googling each other and seeing each other's work. So similar to what Gary said, the Forgotten Place, we're also using the short as a a bit of a proof of concept for a pilot that I wrote last year. Brian is my creative partner on that, and so we've already had a couple meetings about that, and have sent it out to like my industry friends and showrunner friends, and we've expanded the world, and it's a really sweet, poignant TV series. Hopefully, we're getting some traction with that, and then right now I just signed with a literary agent, which is kind of a big deal, and I have and I'm particularly happy because it was with a pilot that features a queer lead. And a couple different queer characters, and there's both a mental health element and a bit of a superhero. Like the queer lead may or may not be a superhero, and I will say partly getting the agent was because he read that pilot, which has been getting some traction, but also we're starting to take it out, and I'm very proud of the fact that like we're getting not only are we not getting pushback on the fact that like the main character is a queer character, but we're getting a lot of like, this is the time for shows with like diverse casts and diverse stories, and stories where like, for example, queer people just get to exist, as opposed to it being like you have to explain their queerness. So he's like, you're gonna make this show. The show is going to sell, and you're going to make it, and this is exactly the time. So look out for that. Hopefully that will be a thing that happens, and we'll continue to make short films and do the stuff that we got to do, and stay sane and happy, and like eventually leave my apartment and see people again would be really great.
Yeah, it's gonna come. It's gonna come. I feel like after getting my first shot of the vaccine, I was like, wow, there is light at the end of this tunnel, and that's kind of amazing.
I just hit 2 weeks past my second dose, and like I just want to like hug everybody around me, except for we're not quite there yet.
You still gotta wear the mask, but you can get in there a little bit more. Yeah, it's interesting, like what you're saying about like sort of that now is the time. Like I feel like the film festivals, sort of my colleagues at a lot of the queer film festivals, we're almost at the point of showing up at Hollywood executives' houses with pitchforks, being like, we want our representation now. And I feel like if this is the sort of the zeitgeist moment of that, I highly applaud it, and I'm glad that all of you are sort of working in it and working towards it. And I guess to sort of wrap this up, if all of these films are available started April 1st and available through the 30th on our Zerb TV channel in the Men's Shorts program. If you haven't seen them yet, sorry for the spoilers, but too bad, so sad. I hope if anybody who has seen it, we hope you enjoyed the show. Wicked Queer is main festival is running the April 8th to 18th. We're doing 27 features throughout the month of Gapril. So please see lots of things. Wickedqueer.org is our website. We'll give you all the schedule and links to get tickets. So please enjoy, and thank you all filmmakers for coming and spending some time with us. And this was such a great chat. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you for curating this great block.
Thank you.
Nice meeting everybody.
Next time in person.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes. Even though we'll be doing great, I'll meet you at the bathroom there, Jeff.
That's where I'll be hanging. Not in the bathroom. Let's be clear.
By the bathroom.
In the corner where no.
I'll have the martini.
Yes.
Bring me a martini. Pull me away.
There was a great short at Wicked Queer last year, I think, that was about like a whole dance in a bathroom.
Yes.
Yeah, so it could be in the bathroom. Like
we don't shy away from bathroom culture here.
Okay. Yeah. Don't let that be the
Long
thing.
legacy of bathrooms.
Takeaway.
I think that's the final takeaway.
Well, yes, it is really. Yeah, Ethan, you're hitting the nail on the head. We have a long history here at Wicked Queer with bathrooms. I think our festival got its start with a glory hole. So, and that's a story for another time. Everyone.
Holes are COVID safe, I heard. So.
True. We was funny. We were thinking about last year when we were planning the festival. Someone sent me a link for portable glory holes, and I was like, "That's a branding genius idea for branding." I was like, "Just put our logo on it." I'm like, "We could sell sponsorships." Thanks. It's the new red carpet.
On that note.
And on that note, Giuseppe, take us home.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Take care. Bye, guys.
Lovely to meet you all.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you, everyone.